my fellow panelists to say a little bit about themselves. So, Dennis.
Lights are bright.
Aren't they bright? I know you can't see anybody out there.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Egan. I'm the CTO at the Archer Group. The Archer Group is a full-service digital agency, and we work with brands across all different types of verticals, financial services, food services, healthcare.
Great, thanks. Ingrid?
Ingrid McGuire with Ernst & Young LLP, Big Four professional services firm. Yes, we are not just accounting. We market our brand and our organization globally. And I sit on the Americas Data Privacy Steering Committee, Director of Direct Marketing for the Americas.
I'm Scott Meyer. I'm the CEO of Evidon. We reveal the invisible web. Our business is to help companies and consumers to see how they're being tracked and help them to control it so they can both have better privacy and make more money. Our consumer application is called Ghostery, which I imagine a lot of the folks in this room use. And if you don't check it out, it will show you every company that's tracking you on every page on the web.
Hi, I'm Pete Titus. I'm with Citibank. I work in a group called Global Customer Marketing and Internet Office. I run a group called Data Management and Governance. So.
Great, thank you. Well, one of the things that everybody's talking about is big data. And the thing that people are talking about more and more, which is great, is the whole issue of data governance. And your mind might go immediately to the whole issue of data security, which is important, obviously very important, but that's different from what we're talking about when we talk about data governance. We're really talking about stewardship of data and the role that data plays within a company or an organization. The great thing that we have about this panel is that everybody on the panel can talk about data governance within the confines of their own individual company. And then for the most part, everybody can talk about their clients and what they see going on in the ecosystem with their clients on data governance. And many of them will also have the perspective of what's going on kind of in the larger ecosystem as well. So I'd like to start maybe with Dennis about how you handle, who owns data governance in your firm, and then what do you see with your clients?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to note that data governance is covered by data is really owned by everybody in the organization. Now, the IT folks would cringe to hear me say that, but it's important to know that IT is the last line of defense when it comes to data governance.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Well, basically, if by the time we find out about it, something bad has probably already happened. Now, I don't mean to make light. That's not to say that we haven't built an infrastructure at the Archer Group that uses the best practices and standards sort of put out there as far as data security. But what we've tried to build at Archer is a culture around responsibility for and being good stewards for data. So what does that mean? We have education programs that everybody is required to sort of attend. They're tailored to basically whether you're an account services person or a data scientist. These courses are sort of tailored to what you do day in and day out. So that's really what I mean is those are the people that are on the front lines. Those are the people that are during a campaign, they're receiving the lists from third-party vendors that may be, God forbid, emailed in plain text or something like that. They need to know, say, hey, something's going on here, and they need to know how to react.
Ingrid, what about you with EY?
Sure. We're a relationship business. So data is actually owned by the relationship owners in our CRM system. But our CRM system is owned by business development markets. And marketing plays more of a stewardship role in the organization. As far as our clients go, our business is built on trust. And so there's a very high expectation that we're going to be compliant with all regulatory guidelines and fair information sharing practices.
But here we're not just talking about regulatory practices. I mean, we're really talking about a whole emerging field because marketers are sitting on so much more data and really should be, kind of within a company, they really should be kind of command central on everything, on perhaps product development, or even perhaps even things like public affairs positions and government affairs positions, that sort of thing. So do you see that in EY?
We're starting to see it. We recently deployed a global CRM system, and traditionally that's done as a major IT project, but marketing had to step up and insert ourselves into the deployment process so that we could not only look at the technology aspect of it, but the use of data and how we would mine the data and the intelligence that we had for marketing campaigns for clients.
So Scott, are you seeing companies looking for more intelligence around data?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we've seen is change in data governance from being defensive to offense. Defense is the essential piece. That's compliance. That's, I do this or else. But what we're seeing is that as the use of data becomes even more essential to drive revenue, they're taking an offensive approach. And the way they're doing that is they need to understand who all their partners are, and they're pushing out proactive data governance policies because there's this whole world of what we call shadow IT, where the marketing group is buying more and more technology, and it's implemented through ways that sometimes makes the CTO very nervous and sometimes the CTO doesn't even know about. And it's because the marketers are trying to play more offense, so putting into practice data governance policies and actually using technology, not just, committees and meetings and policies are really important, but it's the technology and the data on the data collectors that we're seeing as the biggest change.
So can you give an example of offense? What does it mean to play offense?
Here's offense. We work with, of the top 5 CPGs, 4 of them are clients. One of them, we monitor several hundred domains for them around the world. And they have a strict policy about which partners they work with and which ones they don't. And they assess these vendors across a series of criteria. And every week we go through with them and they look at every one of the several hundred websites that we monitor, and they send out new instructions to say these vendors should be here, these vendors shouldn't. Some of these vendors are too slow. Some of these are not greenlit. And then others they use to drive leverage. Because across this big organization, they're saying, well, why are we working with 10 different companies that essentially all do the same thing? Maybe we should consolidate that to 1 or 2, because then we can get a better price, get better service, and get more efficiency. So that's going from defense to offense.
That's a good example. So Peter, tell us about Citi, and are you doing any of the things that Scott or Ingrid described, and where does data governance fit in your organization?
Sure. We're doing almost pretty much everything the other panelists are doing. If it's really starting at the enterprise level, they established a chief data office a few years ago that's really in charge of developing enterprise level governance policies. Those policies trickle down to folks like me, who's really responsible for execution within the consumer side. And from an ownership and stewardship perspective, I want to echo what Dennis said in that we're encouraging everyone to try to take ownership of the data. It's not just technology, it's not just the business, but really a collaboration between the two to address these issues. One of the other big things we've done is really around developing data standards. And I think it goes to that offensive approach, developing consistent definitions across our business, whether it be marketing, risk, finance, whatever, as well as a data quality program. And what we've done is start to develop our own quality assessment. We've brought in tools to do tracking and monitoring and those type of things so that we can catch issues, collaborate with technology, and quickly resolve them.
One of the things that was mentioned a little bit earlier is that DMA last year unveiled a data governance certification program, and that program is aimed strictly at marketers to not to turn them into IT professionals or privacy professionals, but to really educate marketers on the roles and responsibilities that the roles that they have and the responsibilities they have on stewarding data and what that means. So I guess my question to all of you too is, this is a whole emerging field, and it changes, the landscape changes daily, the technologies change daily. What we used to call in the old days channels of reaching customers or potential customers changes pretty frequently. Where do you go for education, for yourself and for your staffs? And where do you direct your clients for education?
The DMA.
Right, good answer.
Shameless plug.
Well, it's true. We are corporate members of the DMA, and we rely a lot on the guidance that is available on the website and through some of the webinars. But in addition to that, we also recently established a data privacy function within our risk management group. And so we rely, at the area level and at the global level, we rely heavily on them for guidance when there are regulatory changes and we need to make modifications in our email marketing system or our CRM system in order to comply with that. And then they also are responsible for working with IT on internal policies and protocols. And so we have a dedicated data management team in our marketing function. And so training and awareness is key as part of their job responsibility and part of the stewardship role that we play.
And let's talk, Dennis. I mean, obviously, your group is a whole lot smaller than EY.
Slightly,
so,
yeah.
Just slightly. So,
Sure.
obviously, you can't do the same thing. So what do you do?
So what we've done is we've created a risk management committee at the Archer Group, which is headed or sort of chaired by different people throughout the year. But usually it's a representative from marketing, client service, project management, development, and IT. Part of that is also sort of heading the education of our staff, and basically organically we approach it with the same vigor we would with as anything else. Like when we're bringing up developers, when we're bringing up designers, we want to find the people that are the most interested in it and sort of make information security experts out of them, to be honest with you. We have on staff two we're a company, we're a mid-sized agency, but certainly a small company. We have 50 employees. We have two CISSPs on staff. CISSP is Certified Information Systems Security Professional.
Which is different from what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think marketers are necessarily going to be.
Sure, no, absolutely. But it's something to take to your CTO and say, this is how I think we should approach this. Because if you rely it cannot be just.
But it's now and by the way, I should say, feel free to jump in, you guys. You don't have to be polite and wait for me to say something here. But it's your marketer who's going to be making decisions about things like data mining, and so that person really needs to have a sense of. Is this something I should be doing? Is this something, or these data sets I should be merging?
Let me ask a question to the audience. Where do you guys all work? Like, who works for an ad agency out there? And how many of you work for a brand in marketing? All right, and how many of you work in technology? You're a vendor of some sort. Okay, so that's about, anybody else have a job out there that I missed? So when you look at this audience, the challenge is it's got to be distilled down into English. And so, committees are important, but like our company has 68 people. And so our job is to try to synthesize this stuff on behalf of our clients. And what we find is that the most valuable piece is to have a team. So what we do in our case is we write a lot of POVs. And that's where if you're a technology company, one of the things that's really helped us to build our brand is we publish a weekly newsletter on these topics. And we blog like crazy. Our agency partners, then we help them with writing these POVs, and they're really, really short, and they're in English. And we even hired our chief privacy officer. I joked when he joined us, my mission was to beat the lawyer out of him so he could learn to speak English. But once you have to beat the privacy professional out of somebody, beat the CISSP, let me rephrase that. Teach them how to speak a language that is more understandable by the marketer.
So again, what's an example of a POV?
A POV is Mozilla blocking third-party cookies. Discuss. But the point is, people are freaking out about this. They are absolutely freaking out, and no one has anywhere to go. So what we do is we try to put ourselves into that role of having an opinion. You need to have an opinion, because there's no shortage of people that will repeat and recycle what's been said. I think almost one of the leaders, I think in particular Wendy Davis and Steve, both do a great job of covering the topic, but you need to have an opinion. And our opinion has been from the beginning, it's dumb. Do not track is dumb. Here's why. And then what we do is synthesize it for people to say, here's our view, which of course is the right view, it's dumb. Here's what the people who are wrong say, which is why it's a good idea. Because what the C-level folks need to understand is, what are the both sides of this? Because I have to come down on either one. You can't just recite back the topic. That, mastery of the obvious will not get you very far in this industry. It's just too competitive.
So, Pete, what do you think?
Well, at Citi, we have developed a pretty good infrastructure because we've been forced to.
And because you're big.
Pardon me?
And because you're big.
We're huge. We're 300,000 employees, give or take. But we have a lot of resources at our disposal, especially from a policy perspective. I think the challenge for us is taking the traditional kind of governance principles we see and applying to these emerging technologies, especially in the digital world with the volume of data, unstructured data versus a traditional data warehouse, vendors, data going all over the place all the time. I mean, it's a real challenge, and even our privacy, security folks, compliance really need to think, I hate to say it, but outside the box. It's kill me for saying that.
Because you are such a big corporation and because you do have those resources, clearly you're in a position to hire consultants and suppliers to help you do marketing campaigns or whatever, analyze data, use new technologies.
Absolutely.
What do you require of your vendors in the way of data governance?
Well, we have policies on information security, so there are different levels of security clearance the vendors have to get. So Citi will actually do on-site visits, do that type of thing. There are pretty strict campaign management policies as well. So you require sign-off on all data transfers from your information security folks, from data governance as well, to make sure there's no confidential data being shared. So there are a lot of checks and balances in place, and luckily, based on our size, we've been able to do that.
I just want to add to that. Cause we're also a pretty large organization, and we have a lot of similar processes in place for when we're sharing data with third parties. But I wanted to touch on something that Scott said too. Because we are such a large organization, and we are in the professional services industry, every person in the firm is an ambassador of our brand. And so when they want to talk, when a local office wants to talk to a not-for-profit about doing fundraising within our organization, and they want a file of employees that they can give them so that the organization can send messages out, there is a pretty rigid process they have to go through to make sure that the data is not PII, that it's fit for purpose, that they have the appropriate IT review, like InfoSec actually will look at the database or site where the data is going to reside to make sure it meets our standards. And so in order for every individual to really understand at a high level the importance of being responsible for data, we recently instituted a mandatory program that we have to take, and if it's part of our performance review process if we don't do it.
So on something like that, do you, maybe it's too early to tell, but I'm wondering whether you have seen or whether you think you will see that kind of an edict, which is great from a data security point of view, but whether it will stifle creativity, whether you've got somebody in the marketing department who says, gee, I wanted to use that new nifty technology about retweeting or whatever, and I just don't know if I can do that anymore, so forget it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not even going to ask.
Well, that's where the process does come in, because looking out at this crowd, when you see these guys show up, you're like, uh-oh, right? Because it's certainly, all due respect, it's probably not going to go fast, and the answer may not be yes, right? But the point is working with the folks here who are in charge of this, if you can inside of your company and help your clients to set up a process to know where red flags are going to come up, because the end run has been historically the approach, which is, well, I'm going to get a bunch of people behind me, like the CMO and other people, and they're going to say, we got to do this. And we're going to tell the people that could say no with, like, I don't know, like 48 hours to say no. Sound familiar? Ever happened? And you're rolling the dice. You're like, I got a pretty good chance that I can roll over on them on this one. Right? That's a terrible strategy, and that's what it used to be. Because when you show up like that increasingly, the answer is going to be no, and they're going to remember it.
Well, if you go to the legal department, the answer is definitely going to be
Right.
no.
So sometimes you can even try to snake it by the legal department and then hope that you don't get caught. That's a losing strategy over the long term, but plenty of people do it. So what we have found is that really successful clients of ours, there's some basic common sense questions that are asked. So it's translated back into English. Is it using PII? What data is leaving the building? Is this an approved vendor or not? Maybe there's like 3 or 4 other questions, and that way they can screen all these things out. So that all of a sudden it takes this whole universe of opportunity, and you can go and you can sift through it, because every vendor, I mean, go walk outside of this door, there's like a whole sea of superly cool companies that would kill to do business with you guys, right? They would run over grandma to get that. Your team needs some type of simple screens to figure out who's going to even be worth talking to, and then you can be much more efficient. So you can avoid the, let's try to end run this with 48 hours to go.
So Pete, does Citi have some kind of simple screens?
There are some, yeah. But requiring sign-off from each of the groups does present some challenges. We do have a pretty good group of folks in the information security and the privacy groups that are pretty creative and are willing to work with us. And either through our governance councils, where we kind of use that as a forum to bring different types of people together, whether it be technology, marketing analytics, and of course, privacy and not legal so much, but other compliance folks. But if you get them all in the same room, people are really willing to help find solutions. And we've really been relying on that.
Dennis?
It's true. I echo that. I mean, and what helps for Archer is also having people that can speak their language and sort of come to that agreement and not say, oh, stupid things like, we're secure, trust us, you know, which is like the worst thing. Well, we're secure. What does that mean? Yeah.
So there are 2 other things that I was hoping we could talk about a little. Do you remember whether we're supposed to invite our audience to ask questions?
Don't.
Anybody want to tell
I
me?
hope so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hard to see if anybody.
It is hard. We can't see you, so
Really good questions.
Yeah, and I assume that there's a mic over there somewhere? Yeah, so if anybody would like to ask a question, we'd be happy to do that. And while you're getting some thoughts together, I would just say that there were 2 things that I was hoping we could talk about a little bit more. And one of them is this whole issue of what's going on in not just Washington, but really in the whole public policy environment. It's happening in the States, it's happening in Washington, it's happening in Europe, where there's a real effort, a real sustained and I think very scary effort to really clamp down on, if not eliminate, the collection of data, not just the use of data. Which I think we could all agree that there are certain uses of data that should not be allowed, and that's that. But it's the collection of data that is really being threatened. And some of the threats are, they would be really hard for any of you to imagine and take seriously because they sound so off the wall, like not allowing the use of any publicly available data anymore. So things that are published in the newspaper are suddenly off limits, or birth and death records are suddenly off limits. And, needless to say, if that happens, we're setting the clock back to horse and buggy times. There's no question about that. So, again, in terms of your organizations and internalizing threats like that, how do you deal with it? Do you take it seriously? Do you say, that's just stupid, and ignore it? Or what do you do with that information?
We take it really seriously, and honestly, in preparation for this, the question was, what keeps you up at night? And that's one of the things, in financial services, we're one scandal away from that. The political process is very reactionary. So you know, and we've been put under the microscope quite a lot. So we're always preparing for those types of situations.
So what we see with clients, and this is something that has been initially counterintuitive, and many companies will say, the chances of me being the company that gets caught and thrown under the bus when everyone else is doing it is so small, I'll take my chances. They'll even essentially say, I'll pay the fine. What's really going to happen to me? Because for them, reputational risk doesn't matter. But if you were to ask any company about that in a public forum, they would say, no, no, our competitors do that. We don't do that. We take this very seriously. We're ahead of it. How do you get ahead of it? It's the counterintuitive piece of actually telling the regulators and telling the press what you're doing. Because some of that is, I'll tell you a story about acknowledging the realities of what the press, and the press and frequently the government, both Congress and the regulators at the FTC, they operate under the same principles, which is, it's not necessarily if it's right or wrong, because things are often gray where you get into trouble here. They're looking for a great story. So don't give them the story. Go out and tell them, because once you tell them proactively what you're doing, it becomes very boring. There's no gotcha. I can think of an example within financial services where the Wall Street Journal threw two very well-known companies directly under the bus for a data strategy because they had filed some patents around it. So these guys had filed provisional patents for something they were thinking about doing. Their other direct competitor actually does it and was not mentioned in the story because those guys have already been telling the press about it. They went to see the FTC. They just got out there, and they made a point of it because then it's old news, right, Steve? I mean, you're not going to, you got to, so if you deprive people of the angle, now you're in control. And that's where it can be very hard. I mean, I'm oversimplifying this to make a point, which is that try to turn it on its head, right? Because if you make something already known, then it's not all that interesting to get you in trouble.
So we're extremely risk averse. I mean, the last thing we want to do is show up in the Wall Street Journal. And so we have, you know, we rely on the rigid processes that we have before we go out with marketing campaigns. And in terms of our clients, I mean, it's full disclosure, right? Our privacy statements are published, and how we, not just how we use data, but what we're allowed to collect, depending on where they are on the web, what type of interactivity, we kind of define it at that level too.
Well, my answer is somewhat simple, I guess. As an agency, I mean, we really we work with our clients and their legal departments to sort of define. I mean, our job is really to just make sure that the privacy policies that are developed are disclosed where they need to be disclosed, or fair balance, or whatever it may be, and that it's disclosed in the right way.
So do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi, Maura Daly from MediaCom. I just wanted to see if we could rewind back to Do Not Track for a second. Sure. I would love an expanded viewpoint that you have in terms of what the implications are to brands and where media buying is going to go as a whole, with potentially what's going to be coming down the pipeline.
Sure, and I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards because we've written a lot of POVs on this. There's really two issues that get lumped together under Do Not Track. The first one is, well, there's three things. One is there's this whole ongoing circular process to set rules where you would have Do Not Track policies put into the browser for third-party data collection on the web. That process has already failed. It'll be officially dead in a couple of weeks. You don't have to worry about that. What you have then is two other actions that have been taken, one by Mozilla and one by Microsoft, to put functionality where they decide what kind of data can be collected, not the consumer. In Microsoft's case, they are putting a Do Not Track signal into the browser that is set to on, that says to every data collection company, this browser does not want you to track them. Now, the consumer has no say in that. And to this point, this has been a big issue inside of the DAA.
Yeah,
no one has.
too.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the one, Scott's being a little bit, not being proud enough here. Scott has been, Scott's company, Evidon, has been a great preferred provider to our whole advertising option icon program, which is the little icon that you see on behaviorally targeted ads on the web. And if you click on that icon, consumers can opt out of all behaviorally targeted ads. And Scott's company has been, as I say, a great partner in that whole program in making it all work and helping companies get into compliance. And the reason that I mention that program is that from our point of view, do not track has already been done. But the core element of do not track is that the consumer gets to choose. The whole program is very, very consumer centric. And so if someone does not want to receive online behaviorally targeted ads, they can click on the icon, they'll get an interstitial that tells them, why did I get this ad, what's going on there, and then very prominently featured is a big check mark. And you can click on that and you can opt out of all behaviorally targeted ads. It will be across browsers, it will be across sites, it will be over time. So if you use your computer at work with one browser and you go home and you use another browser, your opt-out still works. And as I say, the most important thing about that is that it's based on consumer preference. The consumer gets to choose. And that aspect of consumer choice, notice about what's going on, and consumer choice has really been a core tenet of DMAs for 35, 40 years. We have a whole self-regulatory program of which the advertising option icon is a piece of, but the consumer gets to choose.
Yeah, so just to wrap up quickly on Mozilla blocking third-party cookies, they believe that all of the self-regulatory stuff doesn't work. And so they are now proactively trying to shut the third-party cookies off. And that will have, well, the problem is it's actually very hard to do. And as they've seen, they're breaking large parts of the internet. So it actually hasn't launched yet. And we'll see if it ever does launch. It probably will. Implications for you guys, I can talk with you later. We work with a lot of MediaCom clients. The short answer now is as long as your partners and your clients are part of the industry self-regulatory program, there's really nothing to worry about. The impact of turning off third-party cookies by Mozilla will be an annoyance, but there will be plenty of workarounds that will be considered legal and compliant. The reason why we always say that this Mozilla third-party thing is so dumb is that what it will do is by turning off the third-party cookies, they have a mistaken belief that they turn it off, then like everyone in this room will just be out of a job and go do something else. What instead it will do is it will drive the smart entrepreneurs in this room to use other technologies that are less transparent to consumers and are even spookier. So it actually works in reverse, and it just takes a while. This is why you have trade associations and why at times we will feel like we're beating our heads against the wall. We just have to hang in there.
The other thing that will happen too is consumer annoyance, because certain functionalities you just won't have those functionalities. So it's a dumb move for a lot of reasons.
But stupidity is legal in this country still, unfortunately.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted further clarification regarding the Microsoft blocking. Is it that there's a signal and then companies are just choosing not to recognize that as a block?
Exactly. So in IE 10 only, and there's right now 6 different versions of IE that are supported, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, so that's 5 actually. IE 10 by default broadcasts out a signal that says, I don't want to be tracked. Now, all that signal, now, by the way, signals like that have existed for years. There is no requirement, either legal or self-regulatory, that any company has to accept and respect that signal. What happened was that the industry, the DAA, this Uber Trade Association, the administration, the FTC, and the Department of Commerce all got together and held hands over a year ago and agreed that if a consumer sets that signal to on, then everyone will honor it and not track the person. And then Microsoft said, no, we're going to make that decision on behalf of our users, which blew the whole deal up. So now everything is sort of stuck in purgatory until someone gives in. But that is the deal right now.
Are there other? I really truly can't see, so I'm gonna.
Yeah. Is there not a great opportunity for bringing the consumer into data governance? And I'm curious, and Scott, you may be able to talk to this, and Peter, you too, the degree to which consumers really do want to be involved in governing their own data, to the degree to which it's simply a bother. I mean, one other layer of things they need to, yeah, they all in an abstract sense are concerned about privacy, don't want people snooping on them. Do they really want to have to go through a whole set of checkboxes about, you know, where and what to do with their data? It seems like a wonderful idea to give them that kind of power and control, but in practice, how many people really are going to want to use it? So I'm curious the degree to which consumers have shown any real interest in being a part of this process of governing and controlling their own data, and whether there's a chance for companies to differentiate themselves and really to appeal to consumers and say, we're on your side in this, and there's something we can do together about it.
Pete?
I'd say, from our perspective, our customers are actually pretty engaged simply because of, you know, the do not call registries, those types of things, other kind of suppressions that we would normally use in a campaign. I think you're right, though. We could be a lot more proactive with our customers. I think it has to do with communication and actually telling them what we're doing. And I think they would respect that.
I'll give you 3 statistics. The first one is that we did some research in the US, the UK, and Germany, and the results were consistent that consumers are 48% more likely to buy from brands that are transparent with their data policies. So there's a definite business benefit to companies taking that next step to explain things in English. And we work with about 275 companies that have done that. So there's a definite plus there. The second statistic I'll give you is how many people use Ghostery. Ghostery is the epitome of people taking control of their privacy on the web because it enables you to make yourself invisible to all forms of tracking, and you can configure it. Some sites it's okay, some sites it's not. Some types of companies are okay, some it's not. There's almost 20 million users of Ghostery that are active every month. The third statistic, though, which I think is in some ways the most important, is the number of people that will actually take an action on a daily basis to opt out of ads. Because academics, regulators, they have this belief in their mind that what they think represents the entire American consumer, which is not true because there is no American consumer. What you need is the equivalent of nutrition labels. So if I want to know it, it's there, but it's not force-fed to me every time. The number of people that actually click on the ad choices icon is 1/10 of the click-through rate of an average display ad. So the numbers are, while big in aggregate, you know, we process several million opt-out requests every year, relative to the number of people that see the ads and the number of ads that are served, it's a very small fraction.
I was just going to add that I guess in email marketing, the equivalent of that might be consent, where you're putting the power of whether or not you receive things or participate in things in the hands of the consumer. And from what I understand, with the Canadian law that's going to be enacted this year, it's beyond just the commercial emails they get. It goes into whether or not they are giving you permission, the consumer is giving you permission to put cookies on their laptops. So.
Well, let me just, the marketer in me will say, but the problem with that is that you can't know what you don't know. I can't even tell you how many times I personally, as a consumer, have gotten an email or something in the mail or, you know, an ad, some online ad, something that is something that I didn't really know about, and I'm happy to take advantage of. It's like, cool, yeah, I'll buy that. Or, and if I had opted out of things, I would not have gotten that offer. So.
But according to your statistics, the more people know about how that data is going to be used, the more likely they are to actually participate because they want the information. They just want to have some level of comfort about how their information is being used.
Right, and they want it done in a way that they control. That's the reason why, you know, I keep saying, like, do not track is dumb, blocking third-party cookies is dumb, because now you've taken the decision out of the hands of the consumer. And if you were to ask consumers that question, that's fundamentally un-American. And it actually creates a bad user experience because you can't, when you block all third-party cookies, you're going to have a hard time logging into your bank account. It's not even as nice as getting an ad for something you never thought about. Like, basic parts of the internet won't work.
Scott, what is transparent? When you said you've got 120 some companies that are being more transparent, transparency could be a privacy policy that nobody reads because it's 80 screens long. So what is transparent now that is better from what we've seen for the last 15, 20 years online?
So if you look at companies that we work with, and let's take the ad choices icon as an example. If you see the ad choices icon on the footer of a website, because that's where consumers go when they're interested in this information, you click on it, it will render a very simple screen that it says, this is, and the nice part is lawyers will let you write things in English as long as it then links to the impenetrable privacy policy, which is a huge advantage, and that's why consumers like it. So you can start off with a simple overlay that says, here's the data collection policies of this website in English. If you want to translate it to legalese, click here and it will go off to something you can't read. And here are the types of data we're collecting. Here's the companies that collect them. Click here to opt out. And click here to find out more about it. It's that simple. Now, the beauty of that is it's there for people who need it, and it's not in the way for everybody else. Because too often, I think the advocates and academics, they talk about discrete decisions. In which case, the turkey fryer scenario, right? Of which, if you're going to collect data on me buying this turkey fryer and I don't want it sold to my insurance company because my health insurance rates could go up. Absolutely. Do you know how many ads everybody sees on the internet in an average week? 3,500. So you just can't make that many decisions. And that's why you need to provide the information when the consumer wants it, but not have it get in the way of their simple enjoyment of the internet.
Linda, panel, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
I think maybe we need some infographics for privacy. A privacy policy done in an infographic would really grab them, I think. Okay. We're going to take a short coffee break, about 10 minutes. When we come back, we're going to talk about something we've talked about throughout the day in pieces, whether you need marketers or math whizzes to do all of this stuff. And then we'll end the day talking about where value really is being